Amen. It was the best of motives. It was the worst of motives. If you know your Charles Dickens, and who among us doesn't, you know that I have paraphrased the opening line from A Tale of Two Cities. Thank you, Mother, for reading me books growing up. The actual line is, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. I'll read you the whole quote. We're going to be talking about the shootings. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. We had everything before us, we had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven, we were all going direct the other way. The Tale of Two Cities is a historical novel, one of the great ever, written by Charles Dickens about the French Revolution. It starts in 1775 and goes all the way through like 1789 or something. The same period, by the way, of the American Revolution through to the Constitution, roughly. Fascinating book, wonderful book. Dickens was a genius. But how does it apply to us in these shootings? Well, in these shootings, we saw a young white man who was batshit crazy, Southern Baptist. Can't remember his name was like Andrew Long or something. I think his last name was Long. The names aren't important. Decided that his sex addiction was the fault of the massage parlors he obviously frequented or allegedly frequented. I don't know. They're not letting the details out yet. And so to deal with this, he shot them up. Shot up 3 of them, I think, or 2 of them. I can't remember. The details aren't important. He killed, I think he shot 8 people, killed 6, largely Asian women. And the intelligentsia, our masters, the oligarchs who are benevolent dictators, lost their ever-loving minds. This was a blatant act of racism. Even though the kid swears it wasn't racism, it doesn't matter. He doesn't know his own mind. They know his mind. A very, very important facet of our liberal overlords, by the way, and has been since the beginning. They know our minds. We don't know our minds. And this kid is a racist. This was a hate crime, which for whatever reason makes it so much worse. By the way, all crimes are hateful. This hate crime stuff is a sign of the end. It's foolishness of the highest order. Anyway, and this kid has to be strung up from the nearest tree, which, by the way, I'm okay with. String him up from the nearest tree, because he killed 6 people, not because he may or may not have had hate in his heart. He clearly had hate in his heart. You don't shoot people without hating them. The reasons for that hate, I think, are irrelevant. So while they're in full-throated roar about this evil white supremacist racist, another shooting happens in Colorado at a supermarket. Y'all were aware of all this. And instantly the tweet started, the Facebook post, another evil white man, another white supremacist, another racist. Well, they weren't actually saying racism or white supremacy. At the point, they were just talking about evil white men. How it's always white men who do all these shootings, and I'm so sick and tired of my life depending on whether or not a white man's having a bad day. Yada, yada, till the name gets released, and it's Samad Aliwi Alissa, a Syrian immigrant who's been in America most of his life. Now, real quick, let me tell you, it doesn't seem like Islam has anything to do with this particular shooting. I am very hard on Islam most of the times. I am very skeptical of Islam. This particular time, it sounds like this kid was just batshit crazy. It doesn't sound like this was Islam this time. Certainly we haven't had ISIS releasing videos of him swearing loyalty or anything like that. We have reports that, he thought his high school was hacking his cell phone and spying on him. Batshit crazy this time. So instantly, the intelligentsia, our benevolent overlords on the left, put on the brakes. Like that scene from Go Dog Go when the bird walks across the... Too many kids. And now suddenly, we can't rush to judgment. Now suddenly, we don't have enough information. Now suddenly, we find out, well, he may have been subjected to Islamophobia. He may have been bullied by white people. And so his motive, by implication, is okay. Whereas the other kid's motive, which is not even his stated motive, his assigned motive, was hate and racism. He had the worst of motives. The other kid had the best of motives. Both these guys are batshit crazy. Both of these guys are just batshit crazy, murderous products of a postmodern society. Who's responsible for these murders are liberals and leftists and humanists. We don't need to go into all that right now. We're not going to waste time. But none of this is news to you. All of us have seen this coming for a long time. From our own batshit crazy people, the actual white supremacists, of whom there's like 100,000 in the entire country. There are so few actual, legitimate, real white supremacists who think being white makes them superior. That is just like a vanishingly small population. I mean, they're out there, but man, there's not many of them. I don't know anyone who's ever admitted to me that they were white supremacists. I knew one kid in the Marine Corps. He was from Ohio, and he was batshit crazy. I don't know how the hell he made it through boot camp, except he had so much energy. He was just one of those, if he wasn't a little overweight, you'd think he was a meth addict. And I guess he just had the nervous energy that he could do it. And he was a legitimate racist. He would tell you, I'm a racist. That's like the only one I've ever met who would just sit down and say, yeah, I hate black people. I'm white. I've heard people who, the left says we're all racist. You can't convince the rest you're not a racist. Don't even try. That's the way they stop conversations and debate. That's the way they get around, facts and arguments and logic. They go, you're a racist. And you can either argue with them, in which case you've changed the topic to their favorite topic, or you just allow yourself to be painted with that brush of evilness, and who listens to you anymore? It's a very effective debate tactic, and they have mastered it. Anyway, but why do we care? They've been doing this for years. Well, we care because this is going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. First off, they're going to use this trope of the evil white supremacist and his guns to take your guns. Whether you're white, black, Asian, or indifferent, by the way, they don't actually care. They want everyone's guns. They want everyone at the same level of servitude. That's why they hate the middle class. That's why they want to destroy America. That's why they keep bringing in all these people from cultures that do live in poverty and servitude. They want to be the overlords of a permanent underclass. That is their goal. It is the goal of oligarchs and tyrants and thieves and liars from the beginning of time. Hammurabi was trying to have a permanent, Hammurabi might not have been, but you know what I'm saying. The point of organized government from the beginning has been to create a permanent underclass that can be dominated and robbed, and whose labor can be purloined and directed. By the way, black people, Asian people, all of you, once they get done, they have no desire to lift you up to the level that you want to achieve. Your hopes and dreams aren't important to them. They don't want you to achieve your goals. They want to bring everyone down to the same level of servitude, of enslavement. Slaves they don't have to feed or take care of, by the way. Slaves they just get to direct when they want labor. Anyway. But they're going to create these white supremacists. These young white men are going to start saying, well, if you're going to convict me of the crime, I might as well do the crime. And they are going to see themselves set up as the evil enemy, and they are going to start playing the role. And liberals will fulfill their prophecy of white supremacists because they will have created them, because these young men are going to say, the system's unfair, it's rigged. All the things that we saw the black community starts saying in the late 20s and 30s and the Harlem Renaissance, and when liberalism started taking over, when black people prior to that period, they were overwhelmingly Republican and relatively conservative. They still are socially conservative to a large extent. And some young men and some young people who things weren't happening fast enough, and they weren't. I don't know that they could have happened faster, but they weren't happening fast enough. They started looking for another way. They started looking for another voice. And they started listening to the socialists who were, they had a stated goal of turning African Americans leftists and using them as the vanguard of a socialist revolution in America. It was 100% deliberate. They did it on purpose. And you can't necessarily say, well, how did they fall for it? Well, things weren't working, damn it. Progress was slow. Very, very, very slow. And so they turn to another voice. Well, we're going to see that now among white people, about young white men. You know, they talk about how, oh, the demographic change and white people are dying and we'll soon be a majority minority country. And we will, but the white people will still be the largest single group inside that. You know, white people will still be 47, 48% of the country. You know, African Americans, the descendants of the slaves, are never going to be, the descendants of the slaves especially, are never going to be the majority in this country. New immigration is not going to be the majority either, but it's going to be larger swaths than the descendants of the enslaved. I actually like that. That's the one thing from all this 1619 bullshit that I like. We shouldn't call them the slaves. You should call them the enslaved. You know, enslavement is something that is perpetrated on someone. It's not something they are. You're not born a slave. You are enslaved. I actually, of all the PC horseshit, that's the one I actually agree with. So here's the real danger. You know, in setting up these young white men as a foil, as an enemy that they can try to organize a power base against, because that's all it is. They just want a power base, and they need some scare tactic to make people give them power. They're going to start turning these young white men into actual radicalized white supremacist racists, real ones. They're going to alienate them from Christianity, which is the only thing that civilized us. Prior to Christianity, Anglo-Saxons and Northern Europeans were animals. We were animals. Horrible. Rapist, murdering, burning, you know, militaristic, invading. The whole known world at the time looked on us as a scourge. You know, the Vikings, the actual Vikings, not our modern Pastor Joe Fox Vikings, but the actual Vikings were murderers and thieves and a scourge on civilization. The Anglo-Saxons prior to the Vikings were even worse. The Saxons, I think the Angles weren't necessarily the bad ones. The Saxons were just horrendous. When you read some of what they don't want to unleash these young men. They do not want to unleash them from their faith. They do not want to turn them into what they fear. And they don't think it can happen. You know, they think, oh, their time has passed, it's over, they're gone. Yeah, a certain point of their history is past. They're post-Christian now. That should scare the shit out of all of you, all of us. That should scare the shit out of all of us. No one wants the return of Northern Europe, you know, an unchristian Northern Europeans armed with modern weaponry. Nobody wants that. That doesn't end well for anybody. And they're going to create it. It is going to be a very sad day. So there you go. Tale of two motives. The one shooter's shooting wasn't that big a deal because his motives were good, and the other shooting was horrific and horrible because his motives were bad. The one with the good motives killed more people, but he needs understanding. He needs calm. He needs us to wait for information. And the one who actually killed fewer people, he's evil because he's white. That's what it boils down to. He's evil because he's white. The other guy, yeah, he was bullied. He was subjected to Islamophobia. We need to be patient and get all the facts. That is not going to end well for anybody, man. I hate talking about this stuff. I hate it. I hated it when I had to talk about Charlottesville too, because there's no easy way to deal with this stuff. You know, there was racism in my past, in my family. I don't think any of them were ever white supremacists, but I've known some that were racist. You know, we were always on the frontier. We came out of the South, went to Texas. My grandfather left Texas after the war because of what today they would call PTSD. At the time, we would just say he was batshit crazy. I preferred batshit crazy to PTSD. PTSD implies that you're weak. You know, these are not people who were probably enlightened in their views on race. So there has been a problem in the past. And it's not completely gone, but it's as far gone as you can force it. You know, we have squeezed that orange as hard as we can. We've gotten as much juice out of it as we can. Now we've just got to let time dry out the rest of it. You know, we've gone as far as government and society can push this thing. No one wants to hear that, but anyway, there you go. Very, very, very disturbing, very concerning. I have 7 sons. Not all of my children are white, but all 7 of my sons are. Of my 7 daughters, 3 are not white. And I look at, you know, what they're accused of, and just by, you know, anyway, it doesn't matter. I just hate it. I wish it wasn't this way. We appreciate you, man. Thank you.